Are you a chiropractor with a struggling practice, having a hard time finding and keeping patients? Is your staff falling short of expectations? I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and DC Trainings has the answers that you need. So tune in now and find out how. Hello, everybody. Welcome to DC Trainings. I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and today is our next section in Module 3 of DC Trainings, where we're going to talk about creating care plans. But before we get into that, I just wanted to share a story with you because I had a really great experience with a patient who came in, and she didn't really tell me, but she had some digestive issues. She actually came in for neck pain, but I thought I would just share this story with you because this really illustrates the power of chiropractic and how much of a huge impact we have with our patients when we take care of them. And so this was just on my mind because it just happened yesterday. So she came in with neck pain. She didn't tell us that she had this digestive issue, and it was like an irritable bowel syndrome issue, and it really had plagued her for years. And, you know, even with all of our going into details as far as the consultation, which is the stuff I taught you in the last module, in module 2, the new patient module, in terms of digging in for chronicity and finding out all the details about health challenges that your patient has, she didn't share that with us. And then yesterday she came in and she wanted to share with me how in such a short period of time, we've only been taking care of her for about 2 weeks and getting her adjusted and correcting her subluxations and opening up her nervous system so that it could function at a higher capacity or a higher threshold and repair some damaged tissue in the body. Those are the principles that we know about chiropractic when someone gets an adjustment. And so we've been taking care of her for just a couple of weeks, but she shared with me that her irritable bowel syndrome, or this major digestive problem, was completely gone. Now, completely gone, to where she was just awestruck. And I'm kind of trying to illustrate that through our podcast today because it was such an impactful change in her health that she couldn't believe it. I mean, that's how, you know, detrimental this digestive issue had been for her, which she kept to herself. She didn't even share it with us. And all we did was just simply do a super specific chiropractic adjustment, right? We adjusted her full spine, her neck, and her lower back. And wherever we found a subluxation, we opened up those nerves. But what came from that was her body's newfound ability to heal itself because her subluxations were removed. And it was so dramatic that when she shared it with me, she literally got emotional. She started crying and she just said, I just couldn't believe that this was really happening. But after 2 weeks, I have to tell you that this real big challenge for me that's gone on for years is completely gone. Now, I just wanted to share that with you because that's the power of the chiropractic adjustment. We should never minimize it. We should never take it for granted. Our job as a chiropractor is very simple. We want to remove interference to the nervous system through a specific scientific chiropractic adjustment. From there, the body works its magic. Innate intelligence takes over. The body can heal itself when that interruption is removed. Okay, so I thought that would be a great start for today's topic because it was just so amazing. And what is our topic today? Our topic today is creating care plans. And I'm going to jump over to the PowerPoint because I want to show this to you as we go through this. And let me grab the screen here. There we go. And we're just going to jump right in because when I talk about creating care plans, what I'm talking about really is setting a roadmap for a patient's health, for the care that they're going to receive, the chiropractic care that they're going to receive. You're creating a roadmap. And unfortunately for many doctors, there's a reluctance to do this because, I'm presuming here, the reason is because you don't want to hear the patient say no, right? If we stretch it out too far, if we give a big picture approach to this, they might say no because they're really hurting right now. And what they really want is some kind of quick fix that they need help with. And I understand that. That's fine. If I'm really hurting, I want something to happen. I need to get this changed. But to hold back on the big picture of what's possible and not share that with a patient because you're afraid that they'll say no, is, in my mind, doing a great disservice to the patient's potential to understand what we want to accomplish, but it's also doing a disservice for the overall impression that the public has about chiropractic. They won't know that chiropractic is good for so many other things besides a quick fix of back pain if we never tell them that it's good for those things. And we never give them the right solution to prepare for a big picture approach to receiving chiropractic care. If we hold that back, they'll never know. So I feel like this topic is one of the more important topics that we need to talk about, if for no other reason than just to help all of you, and myself included, to really overcome our reluctance to lay out a big picture plan for fear of a patient saying no. So let's dive in here and talk about why this is so important, and of course, how you can implement this into your practice. Now, before I get too far into the thick of this, I just want you to look at your screen, because as you can see on the screen, our next seminar we're coming up on is on July 15th. That's a Saturday, and that's the Module 4 seminar, which is financial arrangements. The reason why I'm emphasizing this right now is because that is our next live seminar. And I would love for all of us to come together on that day and celebrate chiropractic, and then allow me to show you how to structure the financial arrangements around your care plans beyond what? Beyond a per visit fee. See, many of our doctors, and not when I say our doctors that start with DC trainings, but our doctors as doctors in the profession of chiropractic, many doctors charge a per visit fee. And there's nothing wrong with charging a per visit fee, especially when you want to adhere to the fee schedule, the chiropractic fee schedule. That's fine. The point I'm making is that many of us continue to charge a per visit fee. And when you charge a per visit fee, you unavoidably put limitations on how chiropractic is perceived through the general public. When it's a per visit fee, it becomes a per complaint fee, or a fee centered around pain relief. That's just the nature of things. I'm paying for a service. What is this service supposed to provide for me? And if it's a one-time fee for a one-time service, how much bang for my buck can I get by maximizing how I'm utilizing this service that I'm paying for? As opposed to more of a membership plan, right? If you thought about like your gym membership, and you thought about if you had to pay a fee every time you worked out at your gym, every time, the number of times you would work out would inevitably be less than a once a month or once a year membership that you pay, and then you get to use the gym whenever you want, right? Gyms have become smart to this. So it's important to understand, when I teach what I'm about to teach you today, to understand that when you can set up a care plan with more of a membership structure, you will have patients that better utilize chiropractic care, not for back pain, but for health and wellness and maximizing their well-being. So that's really something that I want you to just sort of glom onto as a philosophy and as a mindset when you're approaching the care of your patients, or better yet, when you're attracting your patients into some sort of a care plan. Okay, so let's jump back over here and go right into this and talk about the importance of creating care plans, as it says right here. Okay, all right. So the first part of this, which I've mentioned, but it doesn't hurt to repeat this and to reiterate it, and that is, don't modify your recommendations for fear of rejection. Give your recommendations. Yesterday, I did 2 reports of findings, and my CAs did a couple other ones. But the 2 reports of findings I did, both of them had let us know on their first visit that cost was a concern. They just told us that. And they wanted to know, how much is this going to cost? I'm concerned about the cost. So going into a report of findings, I could have been concerned that if I lay out a full 12-month care plan, these patients might say no and walk away. But my principles and my philosophy and my conviction around the benefits of long-term chiropractic care were stronger than my temporary concern, or maybe what's the right word? My thought of holding back on my recommendations for those patients because they'd already told me they had concerns about cost. So my principles were stronger. And I said, no, I need to tell them the truth. I need to tell them what I really feel will get them the best results, not just short term, but long term. And so I did. I laid it out, and they both signed up for CARE. Okay. Now, one of them I had, and I'll get into this more in module 4. So don't miss the module 4 seminar on July 15th. But one of them I had to actually go through a real careful fee arrangement or calculation, so they would know exactly how much it cost, and so they would know it fit their budget. So I had to be careful about that, and we had to work together to find the right numbers that fit with their budget, and we had to modify their care plan, which again, I'll show you that in module 4. Okay, let's get on track and let's go right through this topic. So the first part is, we're in creating care plans, we're going to explain our recommendations, and we're going to use the Our Report of Findings script, which is on the website. We'll come back to that. So we're going to follow that script to explain your recommendations. Actually, I'm sorry, you're going to use that script just prior to explaining your recommendations. The Our Report of Findings script sort of sets the stage for going into your recommendations. Okay. And I used this yesterday. And actually, this was kind of fun. I have to share this for you because, and I see a couple of new doctors on because, so this is actually especially fun. Dr. Glenn, welcome to the call. And I know you're, getting up and running. And so there's those inhibitions and those, oh no, are they going to say no? I know the feeling. But when I went through the recommendations, my CA, who's training to deliver reports of findings, was shadowing me. And she's been shadowing another CA who delivers report of findings. But she wanted to shadow me to see how I do it, which that's fine. But it also was fun because she said when I finished my report of findings that I had done it exactly the way the other CA did, that she was also shadowing. So there's a consistency across the board in terms of how we deliver reports of findings. And so going back to the screen, one of the consistencies is that I use the same tools my team uses. And one of those is the Our Report of Findings script. So we use that together in delivering our reports of findings. Okay, so we're going to explain those recommendations. On this chart here, this is the top of the page for the report, for the Our Report of Findings page. And it talks about progressive spinal degeneration. The bottom of the page, which is the slide I just jumped to, this is the timeline of how this script is followed, or sorry, not the timeline of the script. It's the timeline of how their chiropractic care is going to progress. So just for fun, I'm going to leave this on the screen, and then I'm going to go through the script. And I'm not going to follow it exactly word for word. The script is designed to give you parameters. So, don't kill the messenger on this one. I will go pretty close to the script though, and I'll hit the high points. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about this. And you can look at your screen at the same time because I'm going to use my mouse to circle these high points that you want to use. So when I put this out in front of a patient and I explain to them, let me go over what I'm recommending for you. And I'm sorry to bounce around a little bit, but just prior to this, there's a big step that is completed in the report of findings process. And what is that big step? The big step is we have 3 major points in the report of findings that must be accomplished prior to going into financial arrangements. There's 3 things, and we don't proceed until each of those 3 things are accomplished. We don't proceed with the ROF. The first one is the push-off. That's when you're first starting the report of findings, you give a small push-off just to let them know where your threshold is in order to accept them as a patient. That's number 1. Number 2 is what's called the demand for care. Once you've shown them their condition and they understand it, then you let them know, based on your understanding, how do you feel about your condition and what would you like to do about it? That's number 2. That's the demand for care. Number 3, which I would love to put you on the spot today. I know I see Dr. Knitsch. I know you know this one, but Dr. Glenn, it'd be fun to ask you. But the number 3 is the Clear 100. That's the 100% commitment to follow through with the recommendations. And we'll cover that in the upcoming section after care plan, creating care plans. But those are the 3 high points. And I followed each of those. And this chart that you're seeing on the screen here is the chart that we use right after we've shown them their subluxations and it's just prior to us going through our recommendations. Okay. So the way this works is I show them this chart and I say, I want to just show you a timeline of how this is going to work. And this is a general timeline. I'll show you specifically how it relates to you in a moment. So this timeline of chiropractic care shows 3 stages of your care. There's initial care, where you're coming in more frequently. These dots are closer together. Then there's corrective care, where the dots start to spread out because you don't need to be adjusted as often. Your condition is stabilizing. And then there's a third section right here. And what does that say? That says what? Patient says supportive care. That's right. And to get through initial care and corrective care can take from 40 to 120 visits, or 1 to 2.5 years, depending on how advanced your condition is. And to do that, we want to get you from here to here. Now, once we get your spine stabilized and it's corrected, if we were to stop adjusting you at that point, what would happen? Would you continue to get better on your own, or would you start to go back the way you came? And I'll give you an example. Let's say you had braces put on your teeth, and the braces were designed to straighten your teeth or to correct a misalignment. Once the braces come off, what do they give you? They give you and the patient says, a retainer. That's right. The retainer must be worn. If it's not worn to maintain the correction, what happens to the person's teeth? And the patient says, they get crooked again. They go back the way they were. That's right. So then you use what I've taught you as far as an education process. This is called Socratic education, where we ask a question they know the answer to, and then we ask another question that's a new concept, but the next question has the same answer as the first one. So they use the same answer. And by hearing themselves say the answer, they are immediately saying, oh, that makes sense. I now understand this new concept. So in this timeline, when we get to this point, once your spine is corrected, and I've used the braces analogy, if we don't continue with health maintenance and prevention, or we call it supportive care, what will happen to your condition? Well, it'll go back the way it came. That's right. And we don't want that. So it's really important to understand, once we get your spine corrected, we'll give you more recommendations in terms of how to maintain that new level of health that you're at, which I'm sure you'll learn to really like and enjoy that. Now, right here, it says symptoms are gone. So at this point, if your symptoms are gone, does that mean your spine is fully corrected? See, I'm pointing at this line here. And the patient says, no, that's right. Now, I want to just share something with you, because the technique that we use in our office is one that I have personally developed and researched and studied for many years, many decades. And actually, for me, it is. I'm going into my 26th year in practice. And so it is more than 2 decades now. So this technique is very advanced. So most of our patients feel, and I'm pointing back to the chart, their symptoms improve quickly, which is great. We want that to happen. But we just don't want that to fool you into thinking that your subluxations are fully corrected. Now, we have a test that's going to show us when they're fully corrected. Even if you are feeling 100% better, we still need to do that test. And what's that test? That test is a new x-ray, or it's a new scan, or it's a new exam. Whatever doctors, whatever you use in your practice to demonstrate and document that point where the person's subluxation is now stable or corrected, or one of those two, that's the point you would plug in at this point in the chart. Okay. So that's the timeline. We've given this, how the dots get further apart. We've talked about the 3 phases of care. We've talked about what happens when symptoms go away. We've talked about ongoing supportive care after that. And then last, we've talked about the timeline. Now, what I teach you in DC trainings, this is sort of our tagline, is lifetime care 1 year at a time. Lifetime care 1 year at a time. So it's another selling point that you can use when you say, normally it would take 1 to 2.5 years to get from this point A to this point B, depending on how advanced your condition is. In our office, because of the advanced techniques that we use, we like to start with the minimum, which is 1 year. Now, what have I just done there? By saying that phrase, we like to start with the minimum, which is 1 year, we've taken what could be an understanding, or no, an impression that chiropractic care is just for this pain relief. And we've expanded it into, oh, I need to come in for at least a year to get to the best point I can in terms of my progress. So it changes. It's like a paradigm shift. It's a new way of thinking about how chiropractic care is going to be used for them, as opposed to just a pain relief. Hey, I'm hurting. My friend referred me. I want a quick crack, and then I'll be done. Right. So we're helping them to transition through this education process and have a new understanding, ultimately leading up to what I talked about, which is our little tagline in DC trainings: lifetime care, 1 year at a time. Okay. Okay. So let's keep going, and I'll share with you the next step of this process. So on this next one here, we went through our report of findings, and I've just shared with you a script for that. You can get the actual printed version off the website. Now we want to obtain agreement that lifetime care is needed and necessary, and it starts with 12 months, or it starts with 1 year. And we've basically done that by going through what I just called a Socratic style of education. We're asking questions. We laid out a visual timeline. We talked about the milestones that are included in that. And we've also talked about the ongoing care that's going to be needed after those milestones are reached. So we've covered all those things in a way that's understandable, and we're following along with our patient. Okay. So in the seminar, obviously, it would be time to practice this, but let's jump over to this next part, because as I explain those recommendations, we're going to go to the corrective care worksheet. Okay. I'm going to go through this on the PowerPoint, but then we're going to look at the website as well, and we're going to talk about the important pieces of that. I will say this, though: if you're not using the corrective care worksheet, you're missing out on a huge asset in your practice. It's huge. I mean, I use it every single day. I've been in practice for more than 2 decades. I know it works well. And what it does is it gives a visual roadmap beyond pain relief. It gives a visual roadmap right into this philosophy that chiropractic care should be utilized on a lifetime basis, 1 year at a time. So it's really a great tool. If you're not using it, if you have any questions about how to use it, please let me know, because I want to make sure this tool is available for you. And the other reason why I want to make it available for you, and I see Dr. Gabrielson on our call, because in your practice, I know you have CAs that do the report of findings. They lay out these care plans. What it does is it allows you to have your team explaining the care plans. See, a CA cannot make a recommendation in terms of what it's going to take to correct a subluxation. They don't have the training, the expertise. They don't have the license for that. That comes with our doctor of chiropractic title. So it's our job to specifically identify what this patient needs in terms of chiropractic care. As a doctor, that's our responsibility. But what the corrective care worksheet does is it allows you to bestow the explanation of our responsibility, or explain our recommendations through a person who doesn't have the license to create those recommendations. And so by doing that, we're actually creating an extension of ourselves, doctors. We're allowing our team to participate at the level of, what a doctor would normally be required to do. Because we've written out our recommendations and we've signed off on it, now a CA can explain your recommendations, which frees you up to do what? Run your practice, serve more patients. You can have a CA explaining this while you're adjusting patients, and all of those things come into play. So it really allows you to raise the ceiling of your practice in terms of your service capacity by using that corrective care worksheet. So just wanted to share that with you, because it really is a big asset in your practice. Okay, so let's keep going. So we're going to use that corrective care worksheet. And the way it works is like this. We're going to explain, first of all, our frequency. Now, this is just a sample one here. I've got John patient. We're going to recommend daily visits for the first week, 3 times a week for 7 weeks, once a week after that, out to 12 months. And that's going to total 70 visits. Now, I had one of our doctors with DC trainings ask me recently, why do you recommend daily for a week? And the reason is twofold. The first reason is I want to have our patients see results quickly. So by checking them each day and getting them adjusted, the results are going to ramp up quickly. So they're going to see results fast, right? But the second reason, which I feel is actually equally or maybe even a little more important, is I want to get to know how a patient's spine is responding. I want to know how it's responding in a way that each time I see the patient, I'm checking, and I just saw them yesterday. So based on what I'm seeing today, how did they respond to that adjustment yesterday? Was it more sore afterwards? Did they feel all their pain go away instantly? Were they feeling other symptoms come up? Was there other things changing in their body? Now, if I spaced out their visit, a week later or 2 weeks later, or even 2 days later, there's a gap there where, let's say the first day they were pretty sore from their first adjustment, but the second day they were fine. They may not remember to tell me that. Or when I'm palpating them 2 days later and I'm trying to figure out what happened, I may not be able to sense that, the inflammation had come up a little bit, or there was some muscle guarding, or there was an area next to the subluxation that was also stuck and hypomobile and needed some extra attention. So it allows me to customize the adjustments in a way so we maintain progress early on in their care. That's why I like to see them each day. So twofold: one, they can see results faster, but number two, it helps me to get to know their spine and how they're responding much faster as well. So anyways, that was a question that just came up this week that I thought I'd share with you. Now, again, of course, based on your technique as a doctor and how you approach chiropractic care, if you choose something different, that's completely fine. You want to customize your recommendations based on your technique and how that patient presents. But let's go ahead and use this example here as the 12 months of care for this patient, their initial 12 months of care. Now, we need to add in some milestones, right? So we're going to add those in here. The care plan milestones are: at 4 weeks, we're going to do a new examination. At 8 weeks, we're going to do a new x-ray. And that's just a listing. It's an APL, which means an anterior to posterior lumbar x-ray. So we don't have to x-ray their whole spine again, unless you choose that. We're just going to do a spot picture of the place that we want to see improvement on. The next follow-up x-ray is at 12 months, which again, that'll be an APL. And that'll show us the improvements up to that point. Now, there's a couple other parts of this recommendation over here. We're going to ask that they attend our orientation, which is a one-time spinal care class that we teach, and we give them things to do outside of the office to take better care of themselves. They're also going to attend our nutrition class, where we'll teach them about nutritional considerations and anti-inflammatory foods. We're also going to incorporate some traction. So it may be that we're selling them a dinner roll, for example, to take home and use at home. Or it could be that they're going to use a cervical traction device when they come into the office each time before their adjustment. Just depends on how you want to utilize that, or if you want to utilize that, you don't have to. And if you offer massage in your office, are you recommending massage? So for some of our patients, I'll recommend a once a month massage, or I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Twice in their first month massage. So 2 massages in their first month, just to help them to relax, to improve circulation, to increase lymphatic flow, and just help their early response to care. Now, beyond that, a lot of patients really enjoy getting a massage. So if you do offer this in your practice, they'll come back and ask you, hey, I did the 2 massages in my first month. What do you recommend now? And from there, I might say, well, I'd recommend once a month for you to really help maintain relaxation in your muscles, improve lymphatic flow, circulation, reduce scar tissue. Those are all benefits of a good massage that can really help a person to stay healthy. So if that's something you incorporate in your practice, great. If you're more of a subluxation, straight chiropractor, obviously don't incorporate that. And if you want to use the corrective care worksheet and you don't offer those things, it's okay. A patient might ask, well, wait a minute, what about traction? What about nutrition? What about massage? It's okay. For you, based on the extent of your condition, which is the subluxation, we're not recommending those things at this time. We'll focus on what you need the most. Okay, so just because it's there, don't feel like you have to offer that to your patients. You can still use the corrective care worksheet. Okay, so let's keep going on. So this is how that looks, right? This is the whole page that I just showed you. We've got the frequency of their adjustments for the first 12 months up top. The bottom half has the care plan milestones with any additional recommendations. And that's the flow of that, right? Now, once we get to the end of the recommendations, right? So just to frame this, I'm going to open up my screen. I showed you the first is the push-off. The second is the demand for care. So the push-off says, in order for me to accept you as a patient, this is what I'm I'm gonna require that you follow through with my recommendations. That's for me to accept you as a patient. Number two, now that you understand your condition and you've seen what's going on, how do you feel about your condition and what do you want to do about it? They say, I want you to show me what I need to do. Then you show them the care plan. At that point, we've shown them the recommendations. Before we go to financial arrangements, we need to explain, or we need to get a 100% commitment. I'm messing up my words. We need to require a 100% commitment to follow through with the recommendations. Now, I had another question come in from one of our members. What if I get a 100% commitment before the recommendations? And the reason why I don't recommend that is because the patient's response is going to be, I can't be 100% committed until I know what it is you're asking me to do. So you need to do the recommendations and then get the 100% commitment. But the same is not true for financial arrangements. If you don't get the 100% commitment until after financial arrangements, that's backwards, because and you will get the response from patients, like I just said, when it comes to financial arrangements. In other words, if you say, I need 100% commitment from you to follow through with my recommendations, now that you've seen what they are, and the patient says, well, I can't give you 100% commitment until I know what it's going to cost. Well, we'll teach you more about that in Module 4 when we cover care plan objections. That's a whole section in Module 4 that we'll get into, and I'll show you exactly how to respond to those challenges and work with your patient to get through that. But suffice to say, since it's on the screen here, we want to make sure that our requirements for acceptance are done after the recommendations, which would be technically the second push-off. That's why it says that on the screen. The second push-off is to say, now that you've seen the recommendations that we have for you, where are you, how much are you committed to following through with this care plan? And the patient says, I'm 100% committed. Now, this is where you do a second push-off. Patient says, okay, I'm 100% committed. That's great. Now, I just want to say, because of the extent of your condition, it's going to require that you come to these appointments. Now, that could interfere with your work. It could interfere with some hobbies. I mean, in Santa Cruz, I take care of a lot of surfers, so it's really easy for me to use an example and say, if the waves get really good and you want to go surfing, we're still going to expect you to come to your appointment. Don't miss your appointment. And the patient says, okay, great. So that's why on the screen it says it may interfere with work or hobbies, and they need to commit to traveling to the appointments. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because this is your second push-off, in the sense that once a patient's symptoms are gone, their priority of making all of these appointments and getting the best results can sometimes slip. Not always, but sometimes it can slip. So it's better to sort of preface this at the front end. There's another example besides surfing, because many of you don't surf, but there's another example that you will run into, and that is traffic. Those freeway subluxations that get in the way. So how many of us have had patients call and cancel their appointment because they were stuck in traffic, or they're tired of the commute, or they just don't want to drive there anymore, right? These are all things that can get in the way of a patient getting the best results. So it's better to put those things out there at the front end. If you live in an area where traffic is a concern with your patients, I know some of you are in like the East Bay, San Jose, or Santa Clara, East Bay. The traffic can get really heavy out there, right? And you have patients that will drive literally an hour or two to get to work each day, and an hour or two to get home, and coming to your office might add another 45 minutes onto that, right? So it's better to lay it out at the front end and say, based on the demographics of where we live and what other patients have shared with us, I just want to make sure that you're really committed to following through with these appointments, because sometimes traffic gets a little heavy, but we do still want to make sure you get the best results. And so we ask ahead of time that you plan for that, and make sure, even with traffic, or even with those heavier traffic days, that you still make arrangements to be here for your appointments. Okay. These are all part of that second push-off. And that's why it's important to do this. And we're leading up to building this commitment to follow through. What does that do? Now, on the surface, it helps you to get better compliance with your patients. They're all going to come to their appointments. You're going to have a better show ratio, as we call it. But on the big picture, it's also going to make the financial arrangements easier, because you want to get all this stuff out of the way before you get to financial arrangements. So that's the only thing left that you work with. So we want to bring that up, especially if it's something that's significant in your area. And then we want to obtain a Clear 100. And this is where we're going to wrap up this particular section, because right after you've gone over your recommendations, that's part 3 of the 3-point checkpoints that I shared with you. And the Clear 100 is important. So this process goes for about 5 minutes. So you want to spend about 5 minutes going through your care plan recommendations. And I'll give you, and as we wrap up, there's 3 simple steps. And actually, this is what I was leading up to. The greeting, 5 minutes, right? And that's the part where you give your first push off. You then review the subluxations. That's about 10 minutes. And at the end of that, we give our demand for care, or our second push off. And I'm sorry, not the second push off, our demand for care. So it's the push off, and then it's the demand for care. And then we go over the care plan recommendations. That's about 5 minutes. And then at the end of that, then we're going to give our next step, which is the Clear 100. So that total time is about 20 minutes for your report of findings. Some go faster, some go slower, but that's generally the time frame that you want. So next week, we'll get into insurance forms, and we'll talk about how you tie in insurance into your care plans and what that does to change how it lays out. I'll just say before we get into that part, the insurance part shouldn't change your recommendations all that much. It may change how you structure the financial arrangements, but in terms of what you're recommending for a patient, that's based on your objective findings and their subjective complaints. So the level of their subluxations is what should always dictate your recommendations, not who's paying for it. Okay. And let me give you an example just to illustrate that point. If a patient came in and they just had a car accident, and let's say it was a really mild fender bender, the injury was small, not a lot of damage to the car, and yet they have a large policy with MedPay. What I wouldn't recommend that you do is set them up with a full intensive care plan of lots of chiropractic adjustments because they have this big MedPay limit, right? If it's a small injury, it doesn't require a lot to get the subluxations, at least to a corrected standpoint of pre-injury status, before you move into the next phase of their care. By comparison, you could have a patient who is in a major injury impact and they have a small MedPay. Well, because they had a big injury, you still want to provide more chiropractic care. That shouldn't change based on the fact that they have a very small MedPay or no MedPay and very little coverage from the third party. It's always best to prioritize the patient's care around what your findings are on their subluxations and not around third-party coverage. So I just say that as a kind of a parting thought, and that'll set the stage for next week when we get into that. Let me go ahead and jump over to our website and show you how this is laid out on the website. And this would probably be a good point just to invite your questions too. If you have questions, let me know. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. You can raise your hand. But let me just show you over here on the website. So here's our topic today. Now, don't forget, our next live seminar is on July 15th. That's going to be coming up quickly. So please go on to the website and RSVP so we know you're coming, because I have to make sure we have seating and all the arrangements that we set up for those of you who are attending. So definitely RSVP on the site. I'll just show you that real quickly. If you go to training, and then you go to seminars, not seminars, RSVP. The seminars will show you the date of the next seminar. So that's July 15th right here. And we'll have a new link up here for that seminar. So you'll be able to connect to the seminar. If you're doing it remotely, this is where you'll go to connect in and join through Zoom. If you want to RSVP and let us know you're coming, very simple, go to the RSVP page, click register, click your name, click save. Now your name is in gold. That means that you are attending. The list of people here is reflecting from the My Practice page where you add your users into the system. So you add the users in, and then everyone will display here, and you can just choose who it is that's coming to the seminar. Okay. So, and once again, that's real easy. You just go click their name, click register, click save, or you can let us know who's not coming by just clicking their names and click not attending, then they'll show up in red. And that lets us know, okay, we need to prepare for 2 people from this office at the seminar. Okay. So from there, though, let's continue on with the forms that are on the homepage. And these are the report of findings script. So this is the script that I was following. I'm not going to read this through because I already did that, but I went through this script with you early on in the call. So that's there for you. You can print that out and train with your team. I'm actually testing my new CA. She's testing on this today, this afternoon. She'll be testing with me on this. I'm sure she'll do a great job. So that's the first one. The next one is the corrective care, the corrective care worksheet, or the care plan worksheet, if I could say that. That's there as a sample for you. So you can print that out and use that in your office. And then lastly, here's the outline of creating the care plans. I do want to read this part for you because this is where I feel like we started today. There's many doctors who are reluctant to recommend what they feel would be the best care for fear of rejection. So here's some simple steps, just 3 simple steps to make that transitional leap so you can feel more comfortable in recommending what you feel is best for your patients. So the first is to create a short-term customized corrective care plan. That's to correct their subluxation, to resolve the injury. If it's in the case of a third party, to get them to pre-injury status, i.e. 8 weeks at 2 to 3 times a week. That could be an example. Number 2, the next step is to set a goal to reevaluate after 12 months to ensure progress. Now, I want to just emphasize this quickly because when I do a report of findings, this is how I start by laying out the care plan. I let them know, and there's a sales technique in this. There's a great book. And I'm going to draw a blank on the author's name right now, but it's a negotiation techniques book, and he does a great job. But essentially, there's 2 techniques. There's what's called a door in the face sales technique, and then there's a foot in the door sales technique. So the one I'm about to share with you was described in the book Door in the Face, meaning that I'm going to start with something big, and then I'm going to back up to make the big thing seem much more manageable. Now, what's big in this example? The big is the re-X-ray in 12 months, because I can almost guarantee you that the majority of your new patients that come in aren't thinking my condition requires 12 months of chiropractic care. They're just not thinking that. But by explaining this door in the face technique, which I'm going to show you, I know that's not the best name for this. We'll have to come up with something a little more user-friendly. But by explaining it in this way, it makes it much more manageable to understand that process. So the way I start this in the report of findings is by saying, based on the extent of your condition, we're going to need to set a goal of taking a new X-ray in 12 months from now. And I just pause and let that sink in, okay? Because that statement at face value can be understood fairly easily. Based on the extent of your condition, we're going to need to plan on taking a new X-ray in 12 months. Okay, understood, right? Maybe whether there was permanent damage, whether there's a corrective change that's needed. You built up through all that when you were explaining the subluxations and the results of their exam. So we're going to need to take an X-ray in 12 months. Now, it's not going to take that long for you to see results, just know. But I want to make sure that we have that goal in mind as we start our course together. Now, backing up, then you fill in the blank. Okay, so let me go back to my screen because you'll see how this plays out right here. The third one is last, add the visits between the end of corrective care and the 12-month evaluation with an ideal maintenance schedule, i.e. weekly visits, every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever your maintenance schedule looks like. So again, we created a short-term customized care plan. We set a goal to reevaluate after 12 months. Last, we added the visits at the end of the care plan and then set an ideal schedule for maintenance after that. So let's go back to here. So how did I do that? We're going to need to take an X-ray in 12 months. Now, it's not going to take that long for you to get results. So we're going to start with the first 8 weeks. And in 8 weeks, we're going to see you each day for the first week. That's so I can get to know your spine and watch how your progress is going along. It's also to help you get results faster, which I know we all want. So after that first week, though, it's then going to get easier. It's going to go down to just 3 times a week. And that will continue up until 8 weeks, where we're going to do a new x-ray, or we're going to do a new exam, or we're going to do some milestone of measuring your progress. I'll just use x-rays in my examples because we take x-rays. So at 8 weeks, we're going to take an x-ray. Now, if your condition is responding the way I think it will and the way we're expecting, then at that point, it'll get even easier, because I'm going to give you exercises to do on your own, and you won't need to come in as often. It'll actually go down to just once a week. And that will then continue until 12 months, when we take the second new x-ray and make sure your condition is fully stabilized. And from there, I'll give you an example. If you had braces and you didn't wear the retainer, what would happen to your teeth? Would they stay straight, or would they get crooked again? Well, they get crooked again. That's right. So if we don't maintain the changes after that year, what's going to happen to the subluxations? Are they going to stay in the best alignment, or are they going to get crooked again? They're going to get crooked again. That's right. So just want to point that out there, because when we get to the x-ray, that won't be the end. That will actually be a new beginning, the beginning in which you have a stable spine, your nervous system has had plenty of time to heal, and you can now enjoy a new threshold of health literally for the rest of your life if you choose to. So we'll go over those recommendations at that time when we see how far the results have come. So I just wanted to plant that milestone for you, and we're looking forward to that. Now, what have I done there? I've set a short-term goal, a long-term goal. I've used lots of analogies. I've used examples. I've used a dialogue. I've used Socratic education, where I'm asking questions. The patient's answering me. I know they understand these concepts now. They've agreed with me. Like, it's all this building process that we're going through. And what ultimately comes from this is what? This is like the patient who just came in yesterday and had this amazing breakthrough experience with her digestive disorder after coming in with neck pain. We want to go through these steps to ensure that our patients get the best results and a better understanding of how to utilize chiropractic care, which is, the way we use it, which is for health maintenance, for health maximization, for optimum health enjoyment, right? Okay, so and I think that wraps us up with our materials. So I do want to just give a shout out. You're on a roll. There's 3 of you that are just doing great with your success rates. And I'm not going to get into the specifics because I didn't look them up before the call, but I did see who's at the top. So thank you for using the goals tracking system and continuing those numbers. I'll wrap up with something I wanted to save for last, because I don't have a link to it. You can look this up. It's a podcast that I watched, and it's actually 3 hours long, so it's kind of long. I couldn't do it all in one day. I watched it over 3 days, but it's a great podcast, and it's with Joe Rogan. So many of you are familiar with Joe Rogan, his podcast. I think it's called the Joe Rogan Experience, and it's an interview of Joe Rogan interviewing Bobby Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Jr., and they cover basically 3 or 4 big topics, everything from vaccines to glyphosate to cell phone radiation. They cover several big topics, and it's just a great podcast. So if you do have access to a podcast, or to the podcast program, or a way to listen in, it's the Joe Rogan Experience, I think it's called, and it's with Bobby Kennedy. I think it's worth listening to. There's a lot of background, or not background, but sort of subtle information and statistics in there that really can help us to help our patients. And as an example, in one of our adjusting rooms, many years ago when my children were very small, the local newspaper came in and did a write-up on me, because one of our patients was working for the newspaper and saw a poster, and it was an educational poster that basically said the ingredients in vaccines are more harmful than our risk of exposure to these diseases that they're vaccinating against. It was a very sort of neutral, not hard sell, not real in your face, just a nice little educational poster. And it was put together by, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but it'll come to me. Anyways, it was just a nice poster. And one of our patients saw that and then did a write-up, because what I didn't know was that Santa Cruz has and had one of the highest percentages of patients, of parents who had opted out of the vaccine schedule, higher than actually one of the highest in the state. There's only one other county in the state that has a percentage as high as Santa Cruz for parents that have opted out of the vaccine schedule. And this isn't to get into the vaccine topic so much as just to say that it was interesting how this podcast that I'm talking about, the Joe Rogan podcast with Bobby Kennedy, got into that topic. And there was a lot of great information that you can share with your patients, which, going back to why I talked about the poster, we have that poster up in one of our adjusting rooms, and I have patients that ask about it all the time, like, every week for sure, if not more than that. Patients will see that poster. It's a write-up by the local Santa Cruz newspaper, has a picture of me with my kids, and at that time they were like 1 and 3. Now they're 19 and 21. So many years ago, but it's there in the room, and lots of patients ask me about it. And it's a great topic to talk to patients about, because they see that poster and they ask about it. And the podcast that I watched had a lot of great information that when those questions are asked, I can now share with our patients. Great stuff. So anyways, I just want to leave you with that. If it's something you want to check out, as I said, they covered a wide range of topics, but the three that were big and sort of near and dear to me, because patients ask us about it all the time, is the vaccines and also the cell phone radiation or Wi-Fi radiation. And the third was nutritional foods that contain glyphosate, or actually environmental situations that contain glyphosate. So I thought I'd leave you with that and wrap up our call today. So as always, thank you for being a part of DC Trainings. Thank you for joining me this week. I'll look forward to talking to you next week when we get into the insurance forms part of the report of findings. Please don't forget to RSVP and join us on July 15th at my office in Santa Cruz. It'll be at 10 a.m. We're going to have a great day, but you definitely need to RSVP on the website. So in the meantime, have fun and practice, and I will look forward to talking to you very soon. Thanks again.
If you would like to become a member of DC Trainings, be sure to head on over to dctrainings.com to get started today.